In 1953, the United States government was conducting secret experiments on its own citizens. Unwitting Americans were drugged, tortured, and psychologically broken, not by foreign enemies, but by their own intelligence agency. The program was called MKUltra. The CIA spent 20 years trying to bury it. This is what they didn't want you to know. The geopolitical pressure of 1953 drove this clandestine shift. During the Korean War, American prisoners of war appeared before cameras, blank-eyed and compliant, denouncing their own country. The American intelligence apparatus panicked, convinced that the Soviet Union and its allies had unlocked a chemical method to systematically rewrite human consciousness. To counter this perceived threat, the Central Intelligence Agency established Project MKUltra on April 13, 1953, under the authorization of Director Allen Dulles. Operated covertly within the Technical Services Division, the program's core purpose was to investigate chemical, pharmacological, and behavioral methods for influencing and controlling human thought. Within the agency, the total secrecy surrounding these efforts was treated as a necessary national security countermeasure. The agency classified the project as an essential defensive weapon rather than standard clinical research. If foreign adversaries possessed the capability to manipulate human behavior, the United States required its own psychological arsenal. This strategic logic transformed experimental psychology into a classified battlefield, justifying unprecedented actions behind closed doors. The program was hidden securely within the agency's bureaucracy, deliberately shielded from external oversight to protect what leaders believed was the nation's survival. To turn this classified directive into an operational reality, the agency appointed chemist Sidney Gottlieb to direct the newly formed program. Operating from within the Technical Services Division, Gottlieb engineered a sprawling domestic network that bypassed traditional scientific oversight. What began as a centralized investigation rapidly fractured into more than 150 separate numbered sub-projects, each designed to study a different facet of psychological control. To hide the agency's involvement, Gottlieb established civilian front organizations to distribute funding. Philanthropic entities like the Human Ecology Fund and the Geschichte Fund for Medical Research functioned as financial conduits. Through these fronts, millions of dollars in federal grants flowed directly into respectable institutions. Dozens of universities, hospitals, clinics, and state prisons were folded into the network, establishing research hubs across the continent. The system relied on absolute administrative compartmentalization. Researchers at prestigious universities received funding packages described in sanitized behavioral science language, with no mention of intelligence applications. This sanitized terminology allowed the agency to purchase massive quantities of lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD, alongside other psychoactive materials, through legitimate-looking pharmaceutical procurement channels. Each sub-project operated in isolation, shielding the program from public and legislative inquiry. The scientists involved rarely understood how their individual findings contributed to the broader effort. Through these layers of civilian fronts and covert funding lines, Gottlieb built a system that turned American research laboratories into a secret proving ground. In 1956, the program expanded from academic laboratories directly onto American streets. Under a sub-project codenamed Operation Midnight Climax, the agency established covert safe houses disguised as apartments in San Francisco and New York City. To run the operation, Sidney Gottlieb hired George Hunter White, a federal narcotics agent who operated under the pseudonym Morgan Hall. For 7 years, White supervised safe houses at 1234 Taylor Street in San Francisco and 315 West 84th Street in Manhattan. The CIA paid prostitutes to lure unsuspecting men from local nightlife spots back to these wiretapped rooms. Once inside, the women secretly slipped LSD into the men's drinks. White recorded the trials in his personal diaries, detailing the behavioral changes of the victims under the influence of various dosages. Behind one-way mirrors, White watched the drug's effects take hold. The agency's objectives were highly specific: to determine if LSD could lower a target's inhibitions to extract truthful disclosures, or if it could cause psychological instability to discredit an enemy. For these men, the experience was a terrifying, unexplained descent into temporary madness, occurring entirely without their knowledge or consent. This domestic testing ground ran continuously until 1963, transforming ordinary citizens into unwitting test subjects in their own neighborhoods. In 1957, the program's operations expanded across the Canadian border. Through Sub-Project 68, the CIA funneled money to the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, a psychiatric clinic directed by Dr. Ewan Cameron. Under the cover of clinical therapy, Cameron used the facility to test a radical theory of behavioral modification. He aimed to completely erase a patient's existing personality and write a new, controlled set of behaviors onto their blank consciousness. This experimental process, known as de-patterning, relied on a regime of physical and psychological trauma. Patients were placed into chemically induced sleep for weeks at a time. Cameron administered electroconvulsive therapy up to 3 times a day at voltages far exceeding standard clinical limits, combined with prolonged sensory deprivation in darkened rooms. To rebuild their minds, patients were forced to listen to recorded messages playing on a loop for up to 16 hours a day through speakers secured inside modified football helmets, a technique Cameron called psychic driving. The subjects of these experiments were ordinary people seeking help for routine psychiatric conditions. Velma Orlico entered the institute in 1957 to receive treatment for postpartum depression. Instead of standard care, she was subjected to high-dose LSD injections and forced to endure hours of repetitive tape loops playing in her room. The procedures destroyed her memory and permanently altered her cognitive functions. Like dozens of other unwitting patients in Montreal, Orlico returned home unable to read, write, or recognize her own family. What the CIA funded as research into cognitive reconstruction resulted in the permanent destruction of human identity. In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms issued a classified directive ordering the immediate destruction of all MKUltra records. Under Sidney Gottlieb's supervision, the technical services staff systematically shredded thousands of pages of operational files, subject logs, and project documents. This purge aimed to erase the program's history and eliminate any paper trail of illegal human experimentation. Only a small subset of financial records and duplicated files sent to other agency branches or shared with external offices escaped the shredders. These stray fragments would eventually serve as the sole evidence left to reconstruct 20 years of covert chemical operations. In 1975, those surviving paper trails landed before a Senate Select Committee chaired by Senator Frank Church. The subsequent public hearings dragged Project MKUltra out of the shadows and onto national television. For the first time, Chief Chemist Sidney Gottlieb was forced to answer for his actions under oath, facing intense questioning about his network of front organizations and unwitting subjects. The committee's final report delivered a clear legal verdict. The Central Intelligence Agency possessed no statutory or constitutional authority to conduct experiments on human beings without their informed consent. In the wake of these disclosures, the battle moved to the courts. Velma Orlico's family secured a private settlement from the CIA in 1988, while the family of biochemist Frank Olson launched decades of legal action to uncover the true circumstances of his 1953 fall from a Manhattan window. Yet, with most operational files shredded, full accountability remained out of reach. To prevent future abuses, Congress passed the National Research Act in 1974, establishing institutional review boards to mandate strict informed consent. While these reforms permanently reshaped medical ethics, they could never repair the damaged minds or restore the history lost to the agency's shredders. We will never know the true scale of what was lost in those shredded files. The real danger isn't the past, it's the enduring belief that national security justifies absolute secrecy. Without oversight, history is always poised to repeat itself. Share your thoughts below.